send it in Kickstarter probably. Okay, I think it's working here. Hang on. Let's test it with you guys first.
Great, perfect. Yep, send it in a text or you email it to me, whatever's easier. Signal, whatever you have access to. Hell of my system's open. Great. Okay, I think I hear you.
Testing. Testing. Can you hear me?
Great. You're live.
You're coming through on the live? I'm going to mute. You can hear me, Stephen? Put something in chat if you can hear me. Okay, great. Yeah, we're moving things over. Okay, great. People can hear me. Let's get this sent out. One moment. Okay, so that's sent there. Now let's also get this in general notifications for people, and then we will be all hunky-dory. Trying to join the launch party and change. Just make sure that that is in fact working. Yes, okay, great. Testing. Yeah, I'm testing. One moment. I want to make sure I've got the right one. Yep, 1 second. No, that's not the take two link. Dang it. Dashboard and one. Try this link instead. Should be fixed now. Send now. That needs to stop. I should go to take two. No, it's still sending me to the take one. Hey, people can hear me. That's good. One moment. I'm trying to get the update out in the Kickstarter announcement, and then I can attend to people. I appreciate everybody's patience with this. Okay. That should be better. Copy. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's the live one. Great. There we go. There we go. Okay. So people should now get that in their email. Okay, as far as what were the audio issues, I'm going to take those off because those aren't important. Basically, it looks as though like however I set up the audio to connect to that the stream initially, it's not something I was able to edit like after the stream started, but then I switched computers and I just set it to like the default audio. I was able to connect to that. I think I was hoping to be able to use like my headphones here to connect when I initially set up the audio. And yeah, that's that. But hey, we're here and I can talk to you guys and you can hear me. So thank you. Thank you. This has been incredible. A little hiccup along the way, but hardly the worst thing to have happened here. Website privacy policy on the screen. Thank you. Let me go ahead and grab that. There we go. That's better. All right. Hi, folks. Okay. Let's just make sure also that the Kickstarter folks have access to the same one. Let's see, 7 people here. I think they kept getting the wrong one. Okay. Gosh. Yeah, I was sending the wrong one there. Yeah, I was sending there. It's better. Great. Good. Okay. How I got the idea for this. Of course, my wife is asking. You already know. No, it was, I've been publishing content for Level Up Advanced 5th edition for some time, which had always sort of been attracted to me because the space in which there's D&D is such a saturated space. It seems like, anything that you could want to find is out there already to some extent. But when I was publishing for Level Up, it was, a brand new system, and like there was opportunities to have fresh takes on, things that were already exciting. And, I started doing like, okay, what are the things that I want to build, and, connecting with other creators and seeing what they want to build. And eventually I hit the point of like, okay, like we've really done a great job of filling out the spaces that were blank. What's left? And one of the spaces was Wild Magic. Level Up Advanced 5th Edition doesn't have as strong of a like 50 item table that Tales of the Valiant or D&D has. And so I was like, that's embarrassing for us. We should have a better one. And so I started thinking about like, well, what's the best possible wild magic system that I could make? And started looking at, all the things that have been done, and kept finding that people would make like 1 or 2 improvements. But like there was no one who put all of those improvements together, and that there was a real opportunity for that. So that was kind of how this all started. Okay, let's see. Other questions here. My wife has asked a couple of questions and is trying to prompt me. I'm going to try to answer other people's questions, but I appreciate her driving engagement. Let's see. How does it feel to accomplish this incredible funding? It's really crazy. It's one of those things where like just to give some context, like when I was in college, way back when, I was spent all 4 years like gunning for a particular career path. And then at the end of it, I was applying to graduate schools and like was one of the finalists for one of the like PhD programs or whatever. And I realized on the visit there that I would hate it. And I would be miserable if I continued down that path. And it was a real moment of like, oh, like I thought I knew what I was going to do. And it turned out that really wasn't the path for me. That was going to make me happy. That wasn't going to make me ultimately successful, because I'm not going to be successful at something I hate. And so now to see this, something that started as a hobby that I was doing just because it brought me joy, and seeing like all of the excitement and support that all of you wonderful people have thrown behind it is really incredible. It makes me feel like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm born for. So that's a really beautiful feeling. Okay, let's see. What else here? The tech hilarious. I remember my wife wants answers. I'll get to you. Reveal anything about the new magic items. Honestly, like the magic items are an area where there's a lot of open space right now. It's something I know I want to do. There's a couple of things that feel like they're necessary. Like I feel like you gotta have a deck of many things wild magic effect, which is sort of odd because that's sort of already in some sense a wild magic item. So I think the approach that Wild Magic Reimagined would take to it would be many decks of things, is what I like to call it. Where it's a case of like, what if we just want wild magic effects themselves to be a magic item, and like how would you assemble that kind of thing? Because the deck of many things is very much in some sense a deck filled with like mini calamities, where like things can really change the campaign if you just draw the wrong one. And so like I think there's opportunities to scale that down and get access to that level of unpredictability and chaos, without necessarily needing it to be a high level thing that's maybe questionable to introduce to your campaign if you have a lower risk tolerance there. Let's see. Eric Mesa is asking, how does it feel as the spouse of someone turning a hobby into a job? I might ask her that as well. My wife has her own Kickstarter ideas, not necessarily in the TTRPG design space, but you should probably be on the lookout for some possible board games coming from her within probably the next year, if we can get that together. Because this time we'll know what we're doing. And so I'm sure hers is going to knock mine out of the water. We're really fantastic, and like brainstorming some of the playtests for that has been a really fun thing to talk about, even while this is going on. What do you think I should recommend to a new player interacting with wild magic for the first time? Gosh, I mean, like that. I think that's so contingent on what you want from wild magic. Like part of the big thing here is that we've got the ability to scale and customize wild magic in a way that's really never been done before. So I think maybe what I would say as like what would I recommend is if you're using Wild Magic Reimagined, be open to the fact that you might not find the thing that's going to work best for you on your first try. And be open to the fact that saying like, hey, you know what, like this scaling or this flavor set, it really wasn't the fit that we thought it was. Let's adjust. I think that's probably the best thing that I would say to someone trying it for the first time. What has been the most challenging part of this so far? I think the most challenging thing and the thing that like led to the most delays was finding out how to find and like vet the appropriate partners. I started working, when I was initially setting out on this and thinking like I'm going to do a Kickstarter, I thought that I would be launching in like March. Or April or something like that. I was trying to time it with the paternity leave of my second born. And part of the reason that that didn't happen is because the artists and graphic designers that I initially reached out to, they had other things going on in their life. They were doing as best as they could, but one of them kind of ghosted me for a little while and was not responsive. And another one was, they submitted work and ultimately I didn't feel like it met the caliber that I wanted for the project. And so learning where to find the people that I needed who would give me the quality and punctuality of the work that I needed for this project was a challenge. And I'm sure it's going to be a challenge going into the future, but I've learned a lot from those like initial delays. And I have a lot better sense now, like what am I looking for as I'm trying to vet who is going to be an appropriate partner for this project. Let's see. The ethics are so important. I love companies, especially teeny tiny ones like Clark here, that has to focus on that. Yeah, I it's kind of crazy, like, jumping from having put out a couple little supplements on Drive-Thru RPG to now suddenly having this wonderful backing. And I really am trying to focus on how do I make sure that the question of like what is right and just always drives the way that I am going to approach business decisions going forward. Whether that's, how am I like making sure that the contracts that I have with artists and writers like respect their rights and, ensure appropriate payment, and how do I ensure that I'm trying as best as I can to give you guys the best deal. I think, one of the things that came into that was the print and play cards as part of the PDF package. That wasn't necessarily originally a thought process that I had, but as I was continuing to think about it, I was just like, you know what, like I shouldn't be gatekeeping the full functionality of Wild Magic Reimagined behind a high price point. So I wanted to make sure that that was something available to people, and it felt like the right decision. Let's see, how did I decide on the aesthetics of the project, art style, card, etc.? Yeah, that's a good question. So funny thing about that is that in some sense, I think that I'm the best person to make this project because I am not necessarily a huge fan of wild magic as it's been implemented. And I think frequently, the way that wild magic is set up is it's, zany and funny and crazy. And I knew that it could be more than that with a little bit more control. And so I wanted an art style that communicated more gravitas, while also giving this sense of like flourishing, expansion, and richness. And the Art Nouveau sort of aesthetic that we've gone towards, I think has been the best for communicating that. I'm really, really thrilled with the cover art piece that we have. I really think it showcases that like, oh, this isn't just pink pigs and bubbles. Although there are wild magic projects that have pink pigs and bubbles. If you search around Kickstarter for a little bit, I think you'll find them. And I've researched those. But that wasn't what I wanted to convey. I wanted to convey that like there were more stories that could be told than what we're used to with wild magic. Let's see. What was the strangest wild magic effect you thought of, and how did you think of it? I think the strangest one that I've got so far is a little bit of an inside joke. There is an intellect card that's relatively low level that basically says that for a brief period of time, an alternate universe overlaps with your own. And basically for, the next, I forget what the time period is, but you play a very stripped down version of Powered by the Apocalypse instead of D&D, where you're rolling 2d6 and adjudicating the results based on that. And I just love that as like a little like meta moment of saying like, hey, this is just a nod to the greater RPG community and all the wonderful work that's been done out there. I think that's one of the stranger ones that's out there. I always feel delighted when I write a wild magic effect that like changes the rules of the game, and makes you have to approach problems in a completely different way, and it maybe opens up different opportunities and possibilities. I've seen other wild magic expansions that use different terms to note positive, neutral, and negative effects. How do you decide on the names you chose? Oh, yeah, my wife would love that. Yeah, we initially started with something more generic, like, I think it was, like positive, balanced, neutral, and negative. But we decided that we wanted something to just convey a little bit more. So wheel and woe, woe is a fairly common word. Wheel, we felt like we could get away with because it's used in, I think, the Circle of Stars druid in the 2014 D&D uses wheel and woe, and we felt like our audience would be familiar enough to get the concept. And it's not that hard to understand. Like if you know woe and we're going with sort of a mix of things, then wheel isn't that hard to get on board with. My wife pushed for a while to see if we could get a W version for neutral, and the closest we ever came to was weft, but which is like it's like a term from the textile industry of like the cross path of a thread, if I'm recalling correctly. But I just felt like it was too much of a stretch, and we needed something that stuck to conveying what the actual effect would do. Let's see. I love this works across all the major 5Es. TV support, benefits and challenges supporting 3 related but different systems. Benefits. I think one of the things is that there are, with TOV and especially A5E, like there's a pretty generous open license that allows me to do some things that I wouldn't necessarily be able to do if I was just using D&D. So for example, the stat blocks for beholders and mind flayers are not part of the SRD, are not part of the open content for D&D in general. The Wizards has decided they'd like to keep that as proprietary information. There's some questions legally as to whether or not that would be enforceable in court, but no one wants to go to court over that. But if I'm using the level up system, I can use sort of their equivalent stand-ins. So their equivalent stand-ins for the beholder is the fate holder, which is a sort of like spider that can like change your fate. And their stand-in for the mind flayers are a group of parasitic wasps called the Calcos, who fill a very similar niche. So what I can say at certain points is like, I can say that this wild magic effect summons like a Calcos, and if you're like, I don't really have Calcos and that doesn't fit my settings, but if you look at the reference materials and sort of see it's like, oh, that's the equivalent position. It can be, if you're playing more traditional D&D, it can be like, I'm going to use a mind flayer there instead because it fills that same niche. So there's some advantages there. Some disadvantages is that, like, in some sense, I don't get to explore like the full weight of like what any one system does. So for example, like I'm trying to avoid to the extent I can doing too much with the like the maneuver system in Level Up Advanced 5th Edition, even though I think it's really great and there's a lot of possibilities there. But I have to be careful about any kind of effect that might work with like their exertion points, because that's not going to be relevant to a lot of people. Sometimes I'm able to get away with it. There's some effects where I can say you get to do this maneuver without using exertion points, and that would be compatible. But that's one of, I think, the challenges there. Let's see. It's my favorite card design. Are we asking about the calamity cards or about just the normal effect cards? Could you be a little bit more specific there? In the meantime, I will try to answer other questions. Are there any new mechanics / rules that this brings in? I mean, yeah, I feel like the entire thing is a book of new mechanics and rules and new toys to play with. I think one of the big things that people who aren't coming from Level Up will find is, like I said, I try to be careful about what I'm bringing in from other systems that don't exist in the others. But there are times where I think that the design possibilities are worth a little bit of friction. And one of those is, instead of using exhaustion, Level Up Advanced 5th Edition uses two systems, strife and fatigue. And strife is a really great way of like denoting like purely mental exhaustion, shall we say. And it's a little bit less punishing than like a full level of exhaustion. And so one of the things I like to do is I really want a couple of compulsion effects, but it's never fun to be told like your character has to do this now because the card said so. So the way that I've structured a lot of them is to say, either you are going to take certain levels of strife, or you can take this action, which may or may not be beneficial to your character. So for example, I think there's one where it's one of the corruption cards where like a corrupted craving takes place in your gut, and the GM can pick a thing that is not typically food, and if you eat it, you get to ignore the levels of strife that you would otherwise take. So I think that's I thought it was a really elegant way of making sure that I could do some compulsion effects without trying to limit people's options. And if they don't feel comfortable with it, and it's like, no, my player would never do that, or my character would never do that, they have the ability to accept an alternative consequence. Let's see. How does the merging of card effects work? So a pure virtue card is X and a pure miniature card is Y. Straight XY merge, or do you take more from one side or the other for wheel and woe? So the basic notion is that so there are 700 cards. 500 of those belong to what you might call the core sets. And there's 100 in each set. Within each of those, there are 20 that form like the very beating heart of it. So for example, there are 20 cards that are just virtue effects with no connotations in any other direction. And I like to sort of imagine that the additional 80 that form that set of 100 act sort of like flower petals, where each of them bridges out in a different direction a little bit. So for example, virtue leaning towards intellect might have things to do with prophecy, with revelations of truth. Virtue leaning towards passion is going to have something more to do with courage, with love. Virtue leaning towards growth is going to have things more to do with healing, innocence. And then there's things like virtue leaning towards corruption, which is real fun. That's one of my favorite combinations, where you get to say, hang on, brain's going away from me. You get to say that those are things like, resurrection magic, things like that. So in a normal pure set, you'd have your heart and then sort of your 4 petals going out. If you want to do a bridge set, what you do is you say, I'm going to take the heart, I'm going to take the petal that leans in the right direction, and then I'm going to do that for the mirror copy of for another deck. So let's take the pure virtue set. Let's take the virtue leaning towards corruption. Then let's take the pure corruption set, the corruption leaning towards virtue. And then we're going to bring an additional 20 cards that are a perfect even split that really like exemplify the tension between those two. So virtue and corruption, I think, is my favorite of those sets because it's such a question of like, what does that even mean? To which the answer is like, if you want a creature that's a balance between virtue and corruption, you look at humans. There's an effect in that set that just summons commoners. It's just like, you know what, that's the creature that is halfway between an angel and a monster is a human. And so there's a lot of different ways that you could play with that. Let's say you've got that virtue corruption set. Maybe you've got like a cleric warlock multiclass. You could say that like, hey, as your character leans more towards evil or more towards good, you get more or less likely to get wheel or woe effects on different cards. So like if you're leaning towards evil, maybe, if you're drawing the corruption cards, you are more likely to get the wheel effect. But if you draw the virtue card, you're more likely to get the woe effect and vice versa. So like there's a really fun kind of balance game that you can play there and some really amazing possibilities. Okay. How did I come up with and decide on the different magic areas, virtue, growth, etc.? They are stolen and reskinned from a major intellectual property that also uses 5 different kinds of magic and which is closely associated with Dungeons and Dragons. I feel very confident that this is not going to cause any issues for us. I chatted briefly with a lawyer in advance. I might as well just say it. Yeah, we're reskinning some of the Magic the Gathering colors. The Magic the Gathering 5 color system was the inspiration, and there's a lot of like official D&D settings that bring in Magic the Gathering colors, and offer options that are themed around those. And so I wanted a system where people who were familiar with that and playing with those settings would be able to look at my 5 areas and say like, oh, I see what you're doing here. I know exactly how these slot in, and I already have a shortcut as to how I'm supposed to be using them. So that's how we came up with those 5. Let's see. What else have we got? Might go back and answer one of my wife's questions at long last. What did she ask? While other people are figuring things out. Let's see. I've lost it there. Let's see. How hard was it to find connections for Wild Magic for most of the classes? Easier for some, harder for others. So classes that are more intrinsically chaotic, like there's a reason that, in base D&D, the Barbarian and the Sorcerer are the Wild Magic classes, right? Those fit in really nicely. The classes that focus on control, like for example, the Monk, it's really a class of discipline and perfection. There's a real question there is like, what is the appropriate Wild Magic tie-in that case? So, more difficult in that area. And it's also a big thing for something like Virtue, where you're asking like, okay, like your magic is probably coming from a divine source. Why would that go wrong? Like, why would a god's power go wrong? And in what ways does it go wrong? One of the things I really didn't want to do was have cards that said like, for example, one of the cards that I've sampled out there makes children love you if you get the wheel effect. And I didn't want the bad version of that to be making children hate you, because that's not really what the kind of magic would do. It doesn't form those kinds of negative relationships. It forms positive ones. So instead it gets overzealous, and children love you so much that they can't bear not to be around you, and they'll cry if you try to leave them. So that goes into that. Even just the 3 calamities on the Kickstarter page are literary. Yeah, there's some literary references on those, which was something to some extent the artists started to go down that trail even without me. And then once we realized we were sort of on the same page with that, we doubled down on that. So Hell's Gate, the fact that it's in a dark woods is very much like a Dante reference. And then for the Awakening, we're specifically using mice because we are alluding to the creation of the talking mice in the Chronicles of Narnia, 3 Pachit. So that's just our little nod there. And there'll probably be more as we continue to go. That artist has been really wonderful to work with. Let's see. Is the time stream one inspired by Back to the Future? Asking my wife that. Or you're talking about the art there. Let's see, so close to 130K with 13 minutes left. I think we can do it. It could happen, but also if it doesn't, we're already running victory laps here. I am so happy and so pleased with everything that's come through. Borges, I mean, you got to have some Borges in there with like the labyrinth and the Garden of Forking Paths. I think that's just one of the question of like, what's a strong, like pure symbol that associates with intellect? I think the labyrinth is just is one of those really useful, iconic moments. So let's see. Yeah, this has just been crazy. Thank you all so much for coming and for being here. Any new spells for the classes? I'm not thinking so much, and I'll tell you why. And that's that like people talk about like wild magic spells. And the question is like, well, magic oftentimes is the case of like an additional spell being cast off of it. So I don't think that's the right direction for the project. If something comes up in the course of things where I'm just like, you know what, like this subclass would really work better if it had a spell that doesn't exist yet, then maybe we'll create some more like chaos-oriented spells that have random effects built into them. But like, we're already creating a whole system for adding random effects on top of spells. And so it didn't feel like a priority to create spells that were already random in of themselves. That makes sense? Let's see. 10 minutes to go. Can we cross that line? I wonder if we'll hit 130. Yeah. Let's see. How did I find my artists? A couple of different places. A lot of the earlier ones were from the Rising Tide Discord, which is a Discord community for people publishing the game space, or artists, writers. And so I posted out a little call, and that's actually where we got the Shattered Sky art from. A lot of others were from ArtStation. Searching for people there, I found that the people who post there are usually pretty professional, and I can learn a lot about what their workflow is and get a sense of their rates. For our subclass art, I posted on Reddit to find that one, and that was a mistake because I got inundated with requests, and there were varying degrees of quality. Some of them were very good, some of them were not so much, but ultimately, like, what made the one that I chose stand out to me was just that their message like approached me like an actual person and not like a formula. So that's how they stood out among 300 applicants. Let's see. So excited for this book. When I get my hands on it, I just want to run a Strixhaven Magic School campaign where the magic goes wrong and every school at your camp here gets a new calamity card goes off. Oh boy. But yeah, Strixhaven's going to be perfect for that because Strixhaven's already built on that sort of Magic the Gathering sort of color system where each of the 5 schools are a 2-color combination. So I forget all of the names of them right now, but I'm sure you know them. Let's see. It's killing me. I'm tempted to upgrade to a physical tier to get us over the line. My partner would not be happy. LOL. Well, we got 8 minutes, so let's see. So easy to integrate. Yes, that's the hope. We wanted that to just be very clear and for it to be very, very simple for people to see. Sort of on a similar point, and where I've gotten some. Oh, actually, as you develop, will playtest documents be sent to the Discord for testing, or that community can help shape the content, or will be a smaller select group of people? Definitely going to be sent to the Discord. I think the plan is we've got some people who are willing to put down a $1 donation. A $1 reservation, not donation, I should say, before the campaign started. And we're going to give them a little bit of reward by just releasing the playtest documents to them a little bit early. But then it's going to be made available to everybody who's on the Discord in short order, so that everyone will be able to contribute their feedback. But yeah, I want people to be telling me, it's like, hey, this effect worked really well. Please do more of these. This effect doesn't work so more well, or you misjudged the balance of this. Can we tweak it? Let's see. What did you initially expect the fundraising to get to before we blew past the 10K goal? Excellent question. So one of my partners for this has been the company LaunchBoom, which if you ever consider doing crowdfunding in a serious capacity, absolutely recommend LaunchBoom. One of the things great about them is that there's a bunch of other creators who are working at the same time, and we sort of compare statistics sometimes. So I had some hunch that we would be able to get to 100K because there was another project that funded shortly before we launched called Halfling's Best Chef. And you can go and look that up. And they had very, very similar statistics to us when we started out. And they managed to hit, I think, just about 100K. So I thought there was a chance. I also thought there was a chance that, maybe I misestimated everything and maybe we'll only get 50. That was sort of like, okay, like we could make things work, but we will be sort of working on a tight budget there. So, I set out when I initially started to do fundraising in the hopes of making 100K. And I'm really happy to see that we've made that and we've gone past it with a healthy margin. Has it been a good first Kickstarter campaign? I think so. I was doing the math. Kickstarter publishes their statistics, and only about 2% of Kickstarter campaigns, including the ones that don't raise any funds, ever get to the 6-digit mark. So getting here on a first try with basically just me for the team right now. I'm going to be bringing in more people, thankfully with the budget that we've got, but I didn't want to put that risk on any other people starting out. And without any kind of major intellectual property behind it or anything like that. There's so many things that make this a really incredible success. I'm so thankful. So yeah. Okay, so close. 5 minutes left to go. Can we cross the 130 line? Let's see. 1624 backers. Oh my gosh. So crazy. One of the things that's crazy, just I'll mention, is that when I was looking at statistics last, we've got about 1,000 orders of the physical book. And the manufacturer, the printer that I was thinking of working with, their minimum order quantity is about 1,500. And it's generally recommended that you place the order for as many as you need to fulfill, plus about 50%, which means that like once we cross that line of like ordering having 1,000 physical orders to fulfill, the price per unit starts to go down, and more of the profits from each individual book sale can be fed back into the project. So that's really exciting as far as like really starting to ramp up where our budget can come from and what we can contribute here. 129,886. I'm really glad I didn't do a 30K stretch goal, because I would just be like biting my nails off right now. And like I think Kickstarter freezes the campaign page once it crosses, so I really wouldn't want to be going to try to post that unlocked image like in the last few minutes. My gosh, wow, it's so great to have you all here. I really wasn't sure if anybody would show up to this, and I'm sure there were some people who saw that the audio wasn't working and turned it off, but I'm really thankful that you guys are taking the time to just be with me as we cross this last line. 3 minutes left. Okay, let's see what happens here. I want to pull up the Kickstarter page itself on a second screen just so I can see the full. Oh my gosh, 129. Okay, yep, 129,886. 3 minutes. How much planning work's done before the Kickstarter was put up? Oh my gosh, so much. So much. Like I initially got the idea to do this April of 2024. So there was a lot of work that went into it. I went to Gen Con for the first time in 2024 and really treated it like a business trip and a research trip. And I didn't spend very much time playing games, but I went to a lot of seminars. Just trying to learn like the business side of that. And that's not even talking about all of the planning and outlining that went into what was the book going to be like. So I'm especially curious, I have to imagine, who work in solo play. But anything you want to say or anything you've noticed with one-to-one or GMless games compared to the standard group? I think it would work as well as anything else in solo play. I think one of the big questions in solo play is, where's that element of randomness and unpredictability come from? So I think there's some real opportunities. I don't have specific thoughts on solo play, and I haven't really done a lot of it myself. But I think it could be a really powerful tool there. Let's see. Don't go too silent on us from now until delivery. I love Kickstarters to keep us in the loop as they design and if relevant playtests. Yes, if you're just joining us, we're definitely going to be sending out playtests. We're going to be sending out regular updates. I will be taking a little bit of a break just as we get started, but my plan is to do monthly updates to keep you on the loop. Whatever's happening, we'll try to have something to tell you, even if it's just, we're continuing to hold. I've gone down just a little bit. Someone's canceled a pledge the last second. Hopefully they're in the middle of upgrading is the reason that that's happened. But that's okay. Final seconds. Didn't know there was a watch party until 5 minutes ago. Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you. I apologize, the right point to ask, but will there be digital versions of the Calamity cards alongside the effects? Yes, there will be. This is something that we have promised in one of the updates. There will be, that's going to be included in the print and play set. And also, we're probably going to be reproducing the art from the cards in the book as well. So if the main thing you're looking for is just that beautiful art, that's going to be, as part of the book illustrations. Where do I join the Discord? I'm going to be sending out the Discord link as part of the thank you announcement in just a moment. So if you want to join the Discord, there'll be a link for you there. How many new monsters roughly? I love the Wild Magic Owlbear. At least I haven't picked it out exactly. The monsters are an area where I really think that there's an opportunity for the other writers that I want to bring in to contribute some of their own original ideas, and I want to give them space. But I think that we could probably expect around 30. I want to make sure that we've got a good range of small ones, of large ones, and that play with different flavors of wild magic. So that's probably okay. Final couple seconds here. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow, 40 seconds. Whew. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Let's 30 seconds left. Thank you for clarifying in the cards. Just found this today. Immediately back to 129,908. Here we go. 20 seconds. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Woohoo! 129,908. That's beautiful. That's great. Oh my gosh. 1,623 backers. Oh, that's beautiful. That's really amazing. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Whew. All right. Well, now the work at home begins, as they say in Hamilton. But yeah. All right. I'm gonna have to go soon because I have a day job to get to. But thank you so much. This has been one of the craziest chapters of my life. Oh my gosh. All right. I'll be sending out those notes. You all get Kobold Press adventures immediately. Just as soon as I get those updates out. It should be pretty soon. They're mostly drafted. I want to do a little bit of editing on the thank you notes. But thank you. All right. I'm going to follow along for next steps and, dare I say, future projects. You do dare say future projects. There's definitely going to be future projects. All right. So long. Thank you so much. Goodbye.